you today? Welcome to our meeting. Today we are going to go over how to create the perfect portfolio. And let me congratulate you on the fact that this is your last class. You're ready to graduate. That is a huge accomplishment. So I hope you spend the mod working on your portfolio and doing a little happy dance. You're almost done and ready for that professional world of web design. And you're ready, Selena. You're absolutely ready. I just wanted to take a moment and say hi and congratulations. I couldn't be any prouder of you. You've done an awesome job throughout school. In this mod, we are going to get that portfolio up and ready in professional quality so that you can hit the door running and you get a job in the web design industry as quickly as possible. We're going to make sure that you're ready. So let's get started with our lecture. I'm going to switch over here to my PowerPoint. There we go. And as you know, this is GAS 490. It's your capstone. And for your capstone, you're working on your portfolio. So today we are going to talk about why you need a portfolio. We're going to check out your Behance portfolio. And we're going to talk social media blogging and using Spark. Our next lecture is Thursday at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. So why you need a portfolio? Ultimately, for any professional, especially in any kind of creative field, and that of course includes web design, you have to have something online that gives the viewers a taste of who you are. In the end, the key is that you need something online that tells who you are as a designer, not necessarily as a person, but as a designer. That is the basic requirement in the industry. How deep, how crazy, how wild you want it to go after that is completely up to you. And for various roles, one type of portfolio may be better than others. It kind of depends on what area of web design you want to work in to determine the feel and the look of your portfolio. Because all of those things are going to determine whether or not a potential employer thinks you fit with the company. So sometimes that means, and well, most of the time, I shouldn't say sometimes, more often than not, you are going to find these job applications, these wanted ads, and you're going to look at them and you're going to do a little bit of research on the company. All of those web design companies have a website. Pull that website up, look at the look, the feel, think about what that website is telling you, not just in text, but the way it looks, the feeling you get from it. It's a fun company, it's a professional company, it's a very, very high-end etiquette type company. Your portfolio is going to need to look that way, right? You don't want to show a wild, crazy, fun portfolio to a company that is very buttoned up professional. Because they're going to look at your portfolio and say you don't fit in this company. Before they even look at any of your work or any of your designs or your list of skills, they are going to look at the face of your portfolio, the overall look and feel that it's given off, and determine instantly whether or not you belong to the company or could potentially belong and fit within the company. So you always want to make sure you do a little bit of research on the company and kind of figure out how to arrange your portfolio, how to make it look. Sometimes it's as simple as simply changing a color scheme, because as you've learned throughout your college journey here, that the color scheme plays a big, huge part in the look and feel of a website and the emotions and that sort of thing that the website, that the users feel when they're looking at your website. So you have to do a little bit of research on the company, and then go in and make the adjustments to your portfolio that are necessary. So what should you include in your websites? Well, of course, buttons and navigation bars. An icon set is always a good thing to have. Why? Because you're a web designer. And a big part of web design, and the trend right now that's going to be going on for quite some time, is icons. Why? Because it simplifies and it leads the users very easily on what they need to do on websites, because there's an icon right there telling them what to do. So it uses less words, which creates more space for other things. So icons are a very big thing in web design, and being able to show that you can create your own icons is a big part of showing off your UI skills and your UX skills, because ultimately those icons are being used to guide the user and what they need to do, and that's a whole part of UX. And then, of course, you want to show them that you can do mobile layouts so that you can make websites that are responsive, and you have the skills in the design ideas, not just the technical capability, but design-wise, that you can design for mobile layouts. You need an example of a stunning landing page, or you could do a thematic design. So you could have a stunning landing page for the home page of your portfolio and make it just completely and utterly awesome. Make that landing page something that really grabs their attention and shows who you are. And they click to enter, and they see your portfolio. A thematic design, what I mean is creating a theme. And this is where, when you do thematic designs, you're either going to only apply for companies that this would fit into, or, like I said, you're going to go in and be making adjustments. But themes are great for helping express who you are as a designer. And I know you keep hearing me say the word designer, and you may be sitting there thinking, but I'm a web developer. I'm a web developer. I'm doing websites. I'm programming websites and databases and applications. But ultimately, Selena, you're a designer, because programming is not the only part of web design. A big, huge other half of web design is the actual design itself, the images, the graphics, the color scheme. That is all the design. And then you have the back end half, which is all the programming that makes it actually work. But in order to be a successful web designer in this day and age, you also have to be able to design, which means utilizing those graphic design skills that you've learned. So you need to be able to show that in your portfolio, and you can do that very easily when you do a thematic design, because you come up with a theme and you carry it over from page to page, which emphasizes to whomever's looking at that, whatever employer is looking at that, that you know how to take an idea and expand it throughout the entire website, which means you are capable of taking a company's brand and carrying that brand over to their website. And believe it or not, there are a lot of web designers that struggle with that. That struggle with taking a company's brand from their print, from their letterhead and their business cards and their postcards, and taking that brand, that theme, and pulling it over and putting it on the website. There's a lot of people out there that struggle with that. Why? Because not too far in the past, web designers didn't have to have graphic design skills. They just had to have programming skills, because the web wasn't what it is now. But now that our technology is advanced, and most people are looking at things on their cell phones and their iPads and their laptops and their mini computers and their iPhone, their Mac watches and smartwatches and so on and so on and so on, it's become imperative that websites look good, because it's not just about giving the phone number of the company or to say what they're about. It's about delivering a message to the user, to the end consumer that's looking at that website. It's all about delivering that message. Well, we do that in graphic arts every time we design any kind of postcard, advertisement, magazine layout, whatever, we're delivering a message. And well, nowadays, websites have to deliver a message like that. You have to connect with the audience. UX and UI, you hear about it all the time. And as you get into the professional market, when you start looking at wanted ads, you are going to see UI and UX come up time and time again. And you're going to see those web developer jobs that require you to have Photoshop skills or Illustrator skills or Adobe XD skills, that they are all going to tell you you have to have some sort of UI, UX experience. Well, what is that? You've learned a ton about UI and UX. But when you boil it down to the very first basic definition, means you have to have some design skills. You have to be able to use Photoshop. You have to be able to use Illustrator so that you can build the things you need to make that website visually appealing to the target audience. That's the very basic definition. Of course, then you have to throw in usability and user friendliness and all of that good stuff. But ultimately, all of that is done with graphics and colors and hierarchy and white space so that you lead the viewer to do what you want them to do, which makes the website user friendly because they know exactly what they're supposed to do. They don't have to guess. So ultimately, it all comes down to those design skills. Yep, you've got to have all the programming skills and things like that, but you have to have those design skills too. And web design companies are starting to really focus on that end of stuff when they're hiring new employers. So you have to be able to show those things in your portfolio, not just lines and lines and lines of code. You need to show them visually that you can design things that look good, that are user-friendly, that you have the skills to deliver the UX and UI designs that they are going to need. So let's talk about buttons and navigation bars, because this is a very good thing to put in your portfolio as an example. You want to show responsiveness. You want to show some animation on your navigation bar. Show some user interaction results, you know, that sort of thing. What does it show for you? It shows your HTML, CSS, Bootstraps, W3 CSS, JavaScript, jQuery. You can show all of those skills by simply making a simple navigation example in your portfolio. Maybe you do a navigation using just HTML and CSS, and you do one in Bootstrap, you do one in W3 CSS, you do one with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You do one with jQuery. That's where your animation and user interaction type stuff comes in, is with your JavaScript and your jQuery. Although CSS now has the attributes that will allow you to do a little bit of animation in your navigation bar just with CSS. Where do you look for help with that? Because I don't want to freak you out, and that is not, I don't want to make you panic. And there are some very simple things that you can do very quickly that will impress your employers. Let's hop over to my Firefox real quick. If you go to, you should be already familiar with W3C School. If you are not, this is something that you definitely want to bookmark. And this is the Web Developer Bible right here, W3 Schools. They have examples and tutorials for everything: HTML, CSS, W3 CSS, Bootstraps, JavaScript, jQuery, AngularJS, JSON, Ajax, SQL, it is very difficult when you're fresh out of school to remember absolutely 100% of everything you learned. It's almost impossible, even as a 10-year professional. I don't remember everything. I pull up W3 schools all the time because I know there's an attribute that does this, but I can't remember for the life of me what it was called. And it happens to all of us. And my go-to is W3 schools. If I can't find it there, then I simply do a Google search, because there is so much support for every language you will use in web design on the web that it's unbelievable. If you have a question about something, the answer is there. You may have to get creative for what search terms you use, what question you ask Google, but if you look, it's there. I promise. Every single question you have has already been asked at some point, and if that 1% of the time you can't find your answer, there are numerous blogs out there that you can register for, ask your question, and that question be answered within 15 minutes. I've done it. So don't feel like you're not good at this, or you're not getting it because you have to go and look up how to do something. We all go in and look up how to do stuff. HTML and CSS were just upgraded. We've got HTML5 and CSS3 now. Well, there's some new attributes that came with all that. I just took a class on some of the new CSS attributes, the grid template layout attributes that CSS has now that they didn't have before. Well, I didn't know how to use them. I had to take a class. I found Firefox, actually. Firefox gave a class on the new attributes. I took the class, learned how to use them, but that doesn't mean that I remembered them all. Matter of fact, I just used them on a web design that I did, and I had to go back to the Firefox developer class and actually look them up, because at that time, it wasn't even on W3 schools yet. It is now. They have updated the website just a couple of weeks ago and included that grid template layout attributes, but they weren't there when I needed the information. So I went back to the class I took. But signing up for Firefox developer, I believe Chrome even has a developer. They're all the time giving free classes. The CSS class that I took on the new attributes was a 4-hour class, and it's on your own time. It's done in recorded lectures, so you can either watch it all at one time or you can break it up into however long you need to. And they're free as long as you're a member, and being a member is free. You just have to sign up. But that is a very good way to sign up for something like Firefox developer or the Chrome developer. Either one are very good ways to stay on top of the new technologies that are coming out and the new additions they're making to CSS and HTML, so that you're using all of the latest techniques every time you design a website. So signing up for something like that, absolutely awesome idea, because they give classes for free all the time on new stuff that's come out in HTML or CSS. And Firefox developer actually does some stuff on JavaScript and jQuery and AngularJS as well. So let's go back, and I want to show you these. We want to look at HTML, CSS. I'm pretty sure you know how to make a navigation bar using HTML and CSS. So I'm not going to show you that example. You can find it here if you want. But you can click on their w3.css. And you can go down and find, there's some animation effects. There's the navigation, w3.css navigation. And You get all kinds of navigation bars you can choose from to create. The drop downs and input boxes and all that kind of stuff using the W3 CSS. And W3 School gives you nice examples of what you need to do. You want to make a navigation bar that looks like this, just your basic. Well, here's the code you need to use. Of course, you're going to have to download W3 CSS for it to work, which you can do from the home page of W3.CSS. W3 CSS is free to use, no license necessary, and you can download it. You can click on just add the link if you don't want to download the entire CSS file. Or if you scroll down a little bit further, you can actually, right underneath that, you can actually download the CSS file. I downloaded it because I only take the rules out of the file that I need so that it's not pulling everything in. And sometimes I need to adjust them and things like that. Well, when you link it from the website, you can't make any adjustments. So I use the actual CSS file. I download it and I use it and just erase anything I'm not using and only keep the rules I am using, and then I can adjust them the way I want to. But back to our navigation and what we were looking at here. Is you've got several examples, and if you go through this page, there's your responsive navigation using CS3. And of course, you've got some colored options, your border navigations, active current link when you want it to be a different color, the hoverable links, and then of course you've got I've seen this on a few websites lately where there's no bar, it's just text links, but when you hover over them, you get a real thick line underneath them. I think those are really cool. So you might find an example to do like that. The right aligned, the navigation bar size, your padding, it will go on and on and on. If you need to spread out buttons, and give you all sort of examples. So what you want to do is do something like was at the top where they showed you the different types of navigation bars. You just set something up like this and it doesn't take long. For W3, all the rules are already there. All you have to do is code the little bit of HTML. I mean, you look at the first one, click on try it yourself. The code you're actually typing, it's right there. That's not much code. And then you're just copying and pasting that for each example and changing the class name so that you get different results. Doesn't take very long, but this is a great thing to have in your portfolio. And it's one of the first things you learn as a new designer is how to build that navigation bar and how to create a button. It may be easy to create. It's not easy to stand out from the competition. So having something like this to display your skills, that's what makes you stand out. Whether you're interested in the flat design trend or you have other ideas on your mind, it's necessary to show off multiple button styles and navigation bars in your web design portfolio. Creating these elements may seem mundane at times because it's the first thing you learned. They're not very complicated, but remember, they are vital to a website, which makes them vital to a solid brand that looks credible and interesting to your potential employers or customers. If you're working with a library like Bootstrap to create a responsive website, you'll want to ensure your design looks different from everyone else using Bootstrap, right? So you need to show some creativeness when you're doing this. And a great way to do that and to show that you've got not only the skills, but the ideas behind that is to create examples for your portfolio. And Bootstrap has the exact same thing. Bootstrap 4 is the latest edition. And just like W3C, if you click on the Bootstrap, you can go down there and BS4 Navs. Here's your navigation menus that look kind of like that. They've got a couple of different looks, but then you've got your nav bars. And they look like this. And you've got a couple of different ways to go with those navigation bars. You've got the collapsing navigation bar that collapses into the hamburger icon. That is popular on a lot of different websites right now because it makes for easy responsiveness. You've got your navigation with the drop down, your forms and buttons, your nav bar text, a fixed navigation bar, which stays at the top and lets the page scroll underneath it. And then you've got your sticky navigation bar. So you've got all kinds of things there to look at, but you also have, let's see, that was, let's look at JavaScript. Oh, I can't remember if they actually have a navigation section. W3, when you're doing the W3 stuff, they're JS Navigator. When you're doing the W3.css, theirs includes some JavaScript on the ones that are really animated. Bootstrap includes some JavaScript too on their responsive navigation that goes from a regular navigation bar to a hamburger icon. And that one has some JavaScript included, but you can see here where you can get a little bit of navigation help and things like that. But the JavaScript is used mainly to do things like open and close the navigation bar to make it responsive. And you will find that information when you are actually going through the W3C stuff and the Bootstrap stuff. Let's go back here and I will show you. Buttons, progress bar, nav bar. Home page. Go, let's find the basic navigation, vertical navigation, colored, brand logo, collapsing navigation. This has got some JavaScript in it. Let's try it yourself. And there's the JavaScript right there. It's got some Ajax and some jQuery. It's got some Ajax and jQuery in it. So it's got a little bit of a combination of stuff. And when the navigation bar is big, it looks like that. But if the page gets smaller, it changes so it becomes a drop down. So you get a nice responsive navigation bar using Ajax and jQuery. And let's see, the nav bar drop down probably has some jQuery in it too. Yeah, looks like it does. And the form element, you can also use other output classes such as input group prepped, input group append to attach icons and help text in this field. You will learn more about these classes in Bootstrap Inputs chapter. So you may have to refer to a couple of other chapters, but Here's like the username. And this has some script in it too. It looks like some Ajax and jQuery in it as well. But here's some simple ideas on how to, work on things like that. And it is important for your portfolio, for your potential employers to see your creative ideas and the fact that you have a true foundation for those basic elements. Because the navigation bar, it's basic, but again, it is the most vital part of every single website in existence, because it's what allows the user to move from page to page. Without it, you would have zero UI UX, because it would be one page, and then the user couldn't do anything with that page but look at it. Yay! The navigation is the most vital part of any website. So showing that you have a very, very strong, solid grasp on how to create a navigation bar, and that you can make them in different styles, and you're creative, and that sort of thing. It goes a long way to proving to an employer that you do indeed have the skills necessary to be a web designer. And that's what it's all about, right? Because that's what gets your foot in the door. That's what gets you hired for a job. So now let's go back and let's talk about concepts. I talked a little bit about these earlier. And showing that you have those kind of skills goes really, really far in improving your UI and UX design skills. Pick a theme. Make your icons unique. They should be informative to the user. There shouldn't be a confusion on what that icon is. You can use Illustrator. It shows off your Illustrator skills. It shows off your HTML skills because you're going to have to code them. It shows off your CSS skills because you're going to have to line them up. Redesigning a set of icons is a great way to get noticed by potential clients and employers in the web design world. No matter which web design trend piques your interest, you can't go wrong with a standard set of icons. From emoticons to social media, you'll have no trouble finding a source of inspiration for your next project. The reason you should include icons in your web design portfolio is simply that they're unambiguous. Whether designing a website for a restaurant or a financial advisor, icons are a must. That's the bottom line. They are a must. You have to use icons in your web design. That is the current trend, and that trend is not disappearing. The icons themselves, the trend in the icons themselves has changed. All kinds of different icon trends come out, but the icon trend itself, using icons on websites, is not going away, simply because it saves space. And since it's absolutely necessary that a website be responsive, saving space is a must, because you've got to fit the important things on that website on cell phone, which means you don't want it to scroll for 10 minutes. You need to be able to save space. And the way to do that is when you get down to tablet and mobile sizes, you start seeing a lot of icons instead of text that you would see on the desktop design. Simply to conserve space, but still give the user the information they need. That's the key, and that's why icons are so important. So let's talk mobile layouts now. They need to be visually attractive from desktop to tablet to cell phone. It still needs to look good. it shows off your HTML, your CSS, your Bootstrap, your W3 CSS, and your Adobe XD skills if you use Adobe XD to do your prototypes. And we will be going over Adobe XD starting next week. It's very, very, very simple program to use and learn. And I will be going over that and demoing it and showing the things you need to do, which will help you get your portfolio together much quicker. Because let's face it, you've got 4 weeks. And while, yes, you will have to continue working on your portfolio past this class, we want to make sure you can hit the door running. So some of that will be creating prototypes of websites and applications using Adobe XD that you don't have any code for, that you just simply created the prototype for. And then after this class, you can start creating the code for those projects and then adding that link from your portfolio to your GitHub account to show that code. But for now, the prototype will work just fine, especially if you use XD, because it will allow the user to actually interact with that prototype and click on a button and it go to the next page, that sort of thing. XD is really, really awesome for prototyping. In 2017, creating a website involves more than simply considering multiple different browsers. That's no longer the big consideration. No, now it is sizing. With the increased popularity of tablets and smartphones, mobile websites are essentially unavoidable. These days, you need to show your client that you can effectively design a responsive mobile website that looks just as great as your desktop designs. If you don't have the experience with mobile websites, it pays to practice before creating a portfolio piece. You'll have to think about touch and user interface and 2 aspects a traditional web designer may struggle with. Now, you've gotten or should have gotten a little bit of experience with designing for mobile in your websites, but it can be a struggle. But that is why, I don't know that if you've paid attention or consciously noted that web designs have gone from being a fluid, I call it a fluid layout, where it's not necessarily structured. Things can go in all kinds of places. We have gone from that simple kind of website to a grid layout where everything has a place and things are a little more even, but they don't necessarily look like they've been made in a table. They're not that sort of even. Now, back in the 80s, you may recall all the websites that looked like they were nothing more but an Excel file put on the website. It had information in each column and each table. No, I am talking about a grid layout. That means that, you know, your header may be 1 row, your navigation may be 1 row, and then you have your top section in your main content area. It might be 3 rows. 3 columns. You might have 3 things. And then the little section underneath it may only be 2 columns. And one of those columns is as wide as the top 2 columns, but it's just a single column. That's the kind of grid layout I'm referring to. That same type of grid you would use in print design for magazines and things like that. And I know you had a class that went over a grid template. That is where web design is at right now. And why are we using that grid layout? Well, because it makes creating a responsive layout so much easier than it used to be. And it's one of the reasons that when we first started designing for the responsive layout, we generally, media queries finally came out, and that came out when we started using Flexbox, which allowed us to do more of a grid. But before that, For media queries became a CSS attribute. What we had to do was we had to code a desktop version. Then we had to turn around and code completely different files for the tablet size. And then we had to code completely different files for the cell phone size. And if we wanted to hit the in-between sizes, guess what? We had to make individual files for every single page of each size we wanted to do. Talk about a lot of coding hours. Talk about a lot of difficulty making the website look similar from size to size. It was very difficult. Because you're talking visually designing. So you had your basic 4-page website. And back then, if you wanted to make it responsive, you ended up creating, let's see, 4, 8, 16 pages just to make a desktop, a tablet, and a cell phone size. 18 pages. Which also meant you had to create 18 different website layouts and 18 different CSS files. And so it was a lot. When media queries came out, we celebrated. I promise we celebrated. Because like, oh, thank goodness. All of those hours and hours and hours of work just to get a responsive website just got cut in half because we got media queries. Well, you know, we started messing with it, learning media queries, and which was the same time that Flexbox came up. And that's when we started discovering, okay, it's a lot easier to use media queries when you've got more of a pattern to your website versus things just here and there and float right and float left. And all of that kind of stuff kind of caused a little bit of complication with the media queries. What media queries definitely wasn't perfect unless you were already designing in a grid layout. And that was not common when media queries first came out. Well, you know, HTML, CSS, and W3C, which is the Worldwide Web Consortium, are the one responsible for all the upgrades to HTML and CSS. They're people that do that. They collaborate with designers and they come up with new things and wants. And so it's all been evolving. And finally, we have gotten to a point where you have this new CSS3 grid template attribute where you can actually turn your web page into an actual grid template layout. And you can say, okay, this div tag that holds the news, I want it to be in column 1 and column 2 for the first 4 rows. And so you give it a class name. We're going to call this 4 rows. Or we're going to call it 4.4. So you get that div class name 4.4. You've designed your CSS to say, okay, in this grid area, I want you to start at row 1. And I want you to end at row 4, column 2. And boom, it's all right there. And it just automatically places it where it's supposed to be. And you can give it some grid padding and space it out the way you want it. And it makes things so much easier, which means when you get down to grid, when your media queries, all you're doing is taking those rows and saying, okay, now when you're this size, I want you to span from column 1 to column 4 instead of just columns 1 and 2. I want you to stretch all the way across. And so you're just changing in the positions of your columns, which is so much easier versus trying to go in and in the media queries, changing the float, changing the margin and how far you pushed it to the right or the left, or the padding on top. And you're having to change all of this stuff, and it gets confusing and it's more difficult. But when you're doing a responsive layout using the grid pattern, it makes things so much easier because they just squish together and reform, and you can say, okay, yeah, now I want this to go to column 1 through 4. I want it to stretch all the way across the page. Or these four little columns I had across this top section here. Now I want just 2 columns, which is half the page. So the first 2 are going to be on top. The bottom 2 are going to be on the bottom. So what was column 1 and 2 on your 4-column page will now be columns 1 and 2 on your 2-column page, because that's what you've told your cell phone size to be, is just 2 columns instead of 4 columns. So automatically that's just rearranging itself, and it's doing it for you. And it's so much easier. So you definitely need to be able to show off your mobile layout. You need to show that you can take a website from its desktop design to a tablet size to mobile size and be able to carry over the look and feel of that website so that the user doesn't feel like they're on an entirely different website when they're on their cell phone. Make sure they know they're still on the exact same website that they see on their desktop. Does that mean it has to look identical? Absolutely not. It doesn't have to look identical. There's key factors that you should already be very well aware of that will make a user feel and know that they are on the same website. And then, of course, we have the stunning landing page. Make it aesthetically pleasing. Follow the Hicks law. Use a welcome gate design for the landing page. Make sure you consider the rule of thirds, and of course, use negative space. Doing a landing page will allow you to show off things like your Photoshop and Illustrator skills, your Dreamweaver skills, your HTML, your CSS skills. According to research from Stanford University, 46.1% of people say a website's design is the top criteria for designing if a company is credible or not. 100% true. Think about your website habits, especially when you're looking for somewhere new to buy something. How do you judge whether or not you should buy from that company? You'll be surprised when you really stop and really think about why you chose that website. Half the time, it comes down to, well, their website looked really good. And that's it. It's the way it works. We are human, and it's the way we work. So think about that. These days, web design clients and employers are concerned with more than simply establishing an online presence. They want to make sure that you can convert businesses to whatever the customer needs. Your design should demonstrate exactly how you'll do that for your clients. Start with an impressive landing page that has some of the most effective features to convert leads. This is a very prominent and latest web design trend, is the landing pages are coming back. Yay! Not my favorite trend, but it's happening. And they're coming back. So you need to be able to show those skills because A, it says that you're up with the latest website trends, that you're on top of it, you know them, you've stayed up to date, you know what's going on currently. It's a good thing to prove to potential employers. And this could include anything from like a live chat window to model pop-ups that prompt customers to trade their emails for a free ebook. Ultimately, this part of your portfolio will show clients that you're exactly the designer they need. You'll show that you not only design beautiful websites, but also that you think about the client's business's needs. That you're willing and have the capability and the education and the skills to not just code a website, but to develop things that are going to help the customer or your client of whomever is having you build their website. That you have enough skills, enough education, enough understanding to not just be able to code something, but to also develop ideas that will assist that client or customer in their ultimate goals. That's what employers are looking for, because it's important for web designers to be able to do that. You know, one time you had the web designer, just a few years ago, as a matter of fact, you had the web designer. And then they would hire somebody to be the UX designer, hire somebody else to be the UI designer. And of course, they would hire a graphic designer to build whatever the UI designer needed. And then it would be passed on to the UX designer. And the UX designer would take it all and prototype it, send it back to the graphic designer or UI designer if it needed changes. And then once all that was done, it went to you, the web developer, and you coded it all. That's not the way it is anymore. There are still a few positions asking specifically for UI, UX designers, but all of the web design offers out there on job boards and things like that require you to have UX, UI design skills. Why? Because it's important that you be able to do both. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to be both if you're claiming to be a web developer. Then you should be able to not only code, but to design as well, because that's what a developer does. It develops the website from start to finish. Let's take some examples of the gateway pages. These are landing pages. Gateway pages, landing pages, same thing. You're seeing these all over the web right now. It's happening to all websites. Like I said, I can't say that it's my favorite, but it is the latest trend. It's what's happening. And it's a simple screen. There's really not much to it. All it is a welcome screen that's in front of your home page. A welcome gate covers the entire screen with a single call to action so that the user only sees like one choice available at first. If they want to see more choices, they either have to scroll down or they have to click a button to go into your website. Usually there's something very similar to what you see here. You're getting them to sign up for an email newsletter or something like that. Basically, it's a very effective way to collect data on the type of users that are visiting your website. Very easy and creative way to get that type of information. A lot of times they'll give away something free. If it's a website that has a very specific target market. Let's say like a font website. A website that we as web developers, graphic designers, hybrid designers, we would be focused on, like font. Let's say font. You've got all kinds of websites out there dedicated to font. Well, guess what? There are a whole lot of landing pages popping up on those websites. And usually what they do on their landing page is they're giving away a free font bundle. Woo! As long as you sign up and you give them your information, your email, your phone number, your name, that sort of thing. Some of them ask for your phone number. Most of them, they just want your email and your phone number. Why? Because then you start getting mail from them, because not only did you sign up to get that free font, but you also signed up for their newsletter. So now they're being able to advertise directly to the people they know are absolutely 100% interested in the font. And so they've just narrowed and created their own marketing list. And they're going to use it to entice you to actually purchase font beyond the free font bundle they're giving you. And of course, we want to sign up because that font looks really cool. We want it. That means we have to sign up. So we sign up so we can get that free font bundle, and then we're getting their emails in our email. And we see them and we think, okay, well, that's a cool font. Or we're working on a website and the customer has said and asked for a specific type of font. You don't actually have anything in your current library to use, but you receive this regular email from a certain font company. So it's the first one you think about. So where do you think you go to look for that font? Of course, you go to the one you get the email from all the time, because that's the one you're thinking about. That was the first thing that popped in your head, so that's where you're going, because you don't have time to spend hours trying to find that font. You're charging the customer for it anyway, so we're going here and we're going to look at it, and that's all I'm worried about. And you get what you need. That's why they do it. And it's one of the reasons that landing pages are coming back, because we are in the age of big data. And companies are finally figuring out how to really use the data they collect to increase their sales and profits and growth and that sort of thing. So it's important that you be able to design things like this. And it's important that you be able to show that you are up to date in the latest trends. And the landing page, this gateway page, is the latest in web design trends. I mean, essentially, you have this gateway page. I mean, it allows you to minimize distractions on your home page while still keeping the functionality of your home page intact. Used to, you would see these sign-ups on the home page, and that means one more space on the home page. You had to either get rid of something that should have been there because you needed to put this sign-up form on the home page, or you've made your home page look more congested because you had to add this little simple form. Well, now they're doing that on what they call the gateway page, landing page. Overall, you're simply applying the Hicks law to your website. It's important that you know which actions are the most important from your bottom line. For example, do you want the user to opt in for your lead magnet, or do you want them to put a product in their shopping cart? Every page on your site should achieve one main objective. The more you can limit your users' choices, the easier your website will be to use, and your conversions will skyrocket. There's the key. The less number of choices they have, the easier it is for them to A, make a decision, B, do exactly what you need them to do. That's just the way it works. It's the way we all work. And then we have the rule of thirds. It gives you 9 equal squares. According to the rule of thirds, the 4 middle intersections are strategically placed that intersect. You went over this, and I believe it was DES 109. Went over your rule of thirds. So you should be very familiar with this. And you need to consider this when A, you're creating a landing page, because normally landing pages have a background photo, or they're set up something similar to this. More times than not, though, they have some sort of image in the background. that causes that visual interest. So you need to be thinking about the rule of thirds in that image. Why? Because it's going to take up the majority of the screen. And as you know, looking at an image that is not correctly proportioned just looks odd. And you don't want to do that to the company that you're building a website for, right? You don't want its users looking at that picture and then blogging about it on social media. It happens all the time. You want to try and avoid that as much as possible. So making sure that you've looked at your image, make sure it looks not just meets your needs, but that it actually looks good. Because the odds are someone at some point is going to say something about that image. It's just the way it works. The world of social media. It's just the way it works. It's the way it happens. And I kind of have a love-hate relationship going on with social media. And think about these examples here. John Lee Dumas' hero image contains a call to action button right on the bottom left intersection. You see where that is? The lower quadrant, right? Where's the first place you look when you looked at that image? It's probably somewhere right in the vicinity of that button, wasn't it? It's the way it works. It's the way the human brain works. This is where we all looked. And you didn't look right at that section because there's a line around that button. With that grid overlay, it takes away that hierarchy. So you can't claim it was because of that. It's not. That is the general location you look at in every single photo you see, even a picture of your kids. That location on the portrait is the general place where you always start when you look at a picture. Why? Because when you look at that quadrant, you can see the rest of them. It's just so it took me a very long time to understand this concept, I guess. When I was in web design school, we didn't get this kind of, we didn't get the design stuff, but I also have a degree in graphic design. And it took me a very, very long time to grasp this. I was like, what? No way. And even though I would try it, I would think, it's just because I think that's where I need to look. But I have a friend that's a professional photographer. And she is the one that made me realize that no, it's true fact. It's what happens. And she did it by using a couple of her photographs. And she had a wall. She had a wall mural in her studio. And she put a camera in my hand and said, take a picture of that wall. And she had a camera that was specially designed. Of course, it was a professional camera. That camera was huge. But I could look through the finder and, you know, it was big. I could see everything, no problem. But it was, of course, connected to a cord that was connected to her laptop. And on the laptop, she had narrowed down the view to only take the shot of the image of where the camera was actually pointing. Although I could see the whole wall, when I looked through the little viewer on the camera to take the shot, the reality was the camera was only pointing at a specific spot. Now you would think that would be the center, wouldn't you? It wasn't. I wasn't quite lower quadrant right on those guidelines. I was a little more centered, but I was lower quadrant and more to the left than I was to the right. So I wasn't exactly center. I was left quadrant. I mean, that's the reality. But that's when I finally understood. That's when I finally really truly grasped that whole rule of thirds concept and how it works. But it's true, it works. It's the way our human brain works. And it's something to keep in mind when you're designing. And just to point out, when we're looking at that and we're talking about the rule of thirds, we're not talking about an entire web page. We are talking the first 500 to 800 pixels because that is what you see on your screen on a laptop or desktop. First 500 to 800 pixels. That is where the rule of thirds apply. Now, when you scroll down below that, you have to apply the rule of thirds again. Now let's talk about negative space. In web design, white space is often referred to as negative space. Positive space is the space that contains all the elements of your site, whereas negative space is all the empty spaces in between. Despite the name, negative space is actually a very positive thing. Because without it, your websites would look very cluttered and confusing and unreadable, unusable, like a bunch of chaos. And it also makes responsiveness extremely easy because you have plenty of space to play with. Negative space doesn't just refer to the space between the larger elements on your page, such as space between your header and your content, or space between your sidebar and your content. It also refers to the space between all smaller elements on the page. And a lot of designers don't think about that or consider that and allow it to impact the overall design. Like the space between paragraphs, the space between lines of text, and even the space between letters. Paying attention to all of the forms of negative space on your sites serves to keep everything legible, scannable, which is extremely important. When's the last time you actually read an entire website? Most likely you scanned it and found something interesting. You read that one little part and you went back to scanning. It's what every single user on the internet does. It's easy on the eyes. And of course, all of this leads to increased conversion because they can easily scan your website, find the information they want. They're going to do whatever you want them to do because there's the information they wanted. So now they got to get more, or they want to buy that product because you're the one that said it did blah, 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 blah. So they're buying it from you. Now, an example of this beautiful white space is this website right here, Flat. It uses a ton of negative space on their homepage to keep the focus on the main call to action, which is to sign up with Google or Facebook. But look at all of that white space. It's huge. You don't normally see that much white space. You don't. They did an excellent job with using all that white space so that there's your choice. When you go to this page, you see that and you think, okay, well, you're signing up before you're ever even looking at the top at your other choices. I mean, they created an exceptional amount of hierarchy using nothing but negative space. That's a huge accomplishment, and it's so totally simple. But the reality is that web developers that do not have that design background truly struggle with negative space or white space if it were print design. They struggle with that concept because they truly don't understand it. You, on the other hand, have a design background, so you are going to be able to use negative space to your advantage and create some truly stunning website designs. And we want to show that off in your portfolio. Now, let's talk about those thematic designs I was talking about. Here's an example of a thematic design. This is a web designer that has used a thematic design on their website. It is one of the most noteworthy options web designers should include in their portfolio is a thematic design. All of this kind of project can be time intensive, meaning that that theme may be short-lived, because as we evolve and the company evolves and the person evolves and the trends evolve, well, the themes evolve too. And that theme is no more isn't viable anymore because it's not modern. And so you have to change it. That is the drawback to using a thematic design, but it is absolutely an amazing way and makes things very, very, very unique. It's doing a thematic design. I mean, it's unique and it's memorable. And that's what you want, right? You need those potential employers or customers to remember you. Easiest way to do that is doing a theme. What works for one company will likely not work on the next. And that's exactly why a thematic design will make you stand out as a web designer. Whether you create a cooking blog with old-fashioned recipe cards for a blog post, or a tutoring website with interactive notebooks and pencil buttons, you can surely find a creative layout that shows off your skills. Or you simply create your own portfolio website and you give it a thematic design. Pick a theme and use it throughout your entire website and make that theme relate to you. There are all kinds of, this is another portfolio website that has a theme. Let's see if I can get this website to pull up. That spaceship one is a really cool thing. Let's see, new share. I'm going to share my desktop so you can see all this. There we go. This is a really cool thing. It's got a little bit of animation in it. And you can see these rocks circle the little moon that was created here the entire time. You've got your stars that when you scroll, it looks like they're moving. They're not really. They're just stuck. So they're scrolling. You've got planets down here with more little asteroid rocks. This is a very thematic design. This is done with simple JavaScript. These are little bitty animations. Some of this is probably some CSS animation too, it looks like. And you can find the information out on, you can find the information on how to do this little bitty animation tricks, like right here on W3 Schools. And there's some really cute stuff going on there. You've got your little Martian man, little astronaut. That's very, the theme is carried over throughout this entire website. So then there is, of course, your portfolio on Behance. Since you're not in attendance today, we're going to save looking at your Behance, I guess, until the next lecture. If you will please email me your Behance portfolio link so that we can go over it, and let me know when the best time is for you to attend lectures. So that, because the lectures focus on you and your portfolio. You're the only student in this class, so the lectures are all about you and your portfolio. So we spend a lot of time during our lecture time going over your portfolio and talking about things that need to change or things you need to add to it, or other ways to improve your portfolio and make sure you are ready for interviewing and getting that first job in web design, or getting that first customer in web design if you want to freelance. So let me know when the best time is for you to attend lectures, and I can change the time of our lectures. I'm pretty flexible. So I'm sure we can find a time that works out for us so that we can you can attend the lectures so that we can discuss this and make sure you're ready once you graduate. Okay, Selena, well, we're going to call it a day. Thursday is our next lecture, and we will be talking about the resume. I will see you then.